Welcome on into our Week 8 Big 12 football recap and reaction show. I'm your host, Pete Mundo. It is always great to be here with you. And another topsy-turvy week in the league. My goodness. You had Baylor beating Kansas 35-23 in a game that went back and forth, a tale of two halves. You had Texas Tech blowing out West Virginia 48-10. Oklahoma State and Texas, what a great game. Game of the week by far. Cowboys win at 41-34, and TCU beats K-State 38-28 in the nightcap. So we appreciate you joining us. Facebook Live, we appreciate it. YouTube, hey, YouTube subscribers. If you're watching on YouTube and haven't subscribed, subscribe to the show. And then, of course, on the podcast, you guys are always the best. Leave us that rating, review, and subscribe. Helps us tremendously continue to build this show and reach even more Big 12 fans each and every single day. So let's talk about the week, and let's go in order of the games. We'll start with Baylor and Kansas. That game was in Waco on Saturday. So, tale of two halves. Baylor led 28-3 at halftime, and then Kansas kind of came steadily marching back, pulled it to a one-score game until eventually Baylor was able to, get the ball back, score a touchdown, and seal that victory by 12 points. I'm looking at this Kansas team as the losing team and saying, 28-3, they trail on the road. They've lost 2 in a row. They've got injuries, backup quarterback, the whole thing, and what do at 28-3? They go to the locker room, they regroup, they put together a really strong second half, and they almost come back to win the game. Even in a loss, I'm not trying to blow smoke up Lance Leipold's backside. I'm really not. But even in a loss, I'm looking at this program, I'm looking at this team, and I'm saying, gosh dang, how do you not love how Lance Leipold has these guys playing? Now, they've lost 3 in a row. I get it. That's not good. But Kansas is going to get to a bowl game. It is going to be a huge step forward this season that nobody would have ever expected, considering the over-under was 2.5 wins. And, when you're down 28-3 and you're able to kind of fight on the road, you've lost 2 in a row and almost come back. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that says a lot about the coaching staff. And I'll talk about a coaching staff coming up that's doing the opposite of that right now in Morgantown, West Virginia. But that was my big takeaway when it comes to what Kansas almost pulled off yesterday, despite the fact that they didn't have their best stuff. But I'm looking at Baylor and I'm saying, okay, this was an elimination game for the Big 12 championship race. Now, Baylor's still a long shot sitting at 2-2 in conference play, but the loser of this game was unofficially out of the Big 12 championship running. And Baylor is a team I thought would play for a Big 12 title again this year. I thought they could repeat as Big 12 champs. And unfortunately for them, it hasn't worked out that way this season thus far. But the way they played yesterday, Richard Reese, the running back, tore up the Kansas defense. 31 carries, 186 yards, and a couple of scores. That was the guy that I mentioned to watch leading up to this game because I knew, and we all knew, the Kansas rush defense was suspect, and Reese far exceeded my expectations with that kind of a game. But he absolutely tore up the Kansas run defense. And then on the other side of the ball, finally you saw Baylor win this game in the trenches in a way that I thought they would throughout the season, but really hadn't. They held Kansas to 2.5 rushing yards per carry, 56 total rushing yards on the afternoon for the Kansas Jayhawks. That's the kind of stuff that I expected to see more of this season from Baylor, and we really hadn't seen that so far this season. So that was impressive to watch that run defense in action. Now, I know a lot of that, too, was just the reality of the fact that, Kansas was behind. They had to start slinging the ball around, and that's how it had to go. But still, I thought Baylor, coming off that really tough loss at West Virginia, obviously lost Blake Shapen in that game. He was back on Saturday, and he was okay. He's still kind of getting back and comfortable, but they showed me a lot. So kudos to the Bears. They get a good win on Saturday against Kansas, 35-23 in that game. Now, next up in our Big 12 football recap and reaction show, Texas Tech against West Virginia. The Red Raiders dominate 48-10 Now, with all due respect to Texas Tech, and I genuinely mean that, West Virginia has no business losing this game 48-10. This game and the way it played out and the final score is a complete indictment on Neil Brown and this coaching staff. That was embarrassing. Neil Brown and West Virginia should be walking home after that game. That's how pathetic that game was for the Mountaineers. Like, I think Tech's a good team. But are you kidding me? 48-10? No. No. It was pathetic. I mean, Texas Tech put up 239 rushing yards, over nearly 4.5 yards per carry. Xavier White had a monster game at wide receiver for the Red Raiders. And, you know, look at this. Texas Tech had given up 23 sacks in 6 games coming into this one. 23 sacks in 6 games, right? I mean, that's a huge number. What did West Virginia do yesterday? 1 sack. 1 sack and 3 quarterback hurries against the worst offensive line in the entire Big 12. That is embarrassing. West Virginia looked like it didn't want to be there. I mean, and, you know, this is really duplicating how they played a couple of weeks ago on the road against Texas. They were down 28-0 in the blink of an eye. In this one, they were down, 17-3 at halftime, and then it only got worse in the second half. They got outscored in the second half 31-7. I'm sorry. I mean, it's bad in Morgantown right now. It's bad. And I don't know how many of you West Virginia fans are still trusting the climb, but I'm not quite sure why you would. Like, what would you trust the climb over? How would you trust the climb? What are you trusting it because of? Those are the questions that I have for West Virginia fans. Now, to Texas Tech's credit, Tech did a very good job, and Tech's defense is underrated. Tech's defense had 6 tackles for loss in the day. They did a nice job. We know, they picked off JT Daniels 3 times. Kudos to them. And then offensively, Taj Brooks, Xavier White, Baron Morton. I mean, that can be a pretty nice lethal trio here down the stretch of the season. Baron Morton's got to be QB1 for Texas Tech. There's no quarterback controversy in Lubbock. It's Baron Morton's team. I would just roll with that dude. Roll with the hot hand. He looks like the real deal. Baron Morton looks like the kind of guy, if you continue to build the team around him, you can get you can compete. I'm not going to say win, but Tech can compete for Big 12 titles with Baron Morton, depending on what they've got around him. I am that impressed with him against Oklahoma State and now against West Virginia. So you ride that guy who's 28 of 45, 325 yards and a couple of scores. That's what you do with a guy who's got that kind of talent at the position. He's got the confidence. He's got the swagger. He's got the accuracy. I really like what Baron Morton brings to the table for the Texas Tech Red Raiders at quarterback, and I would just ride him the rest of the way. And then, you've got talent at the skill positions, which we knew. I mean, I think it was 9 different Red Raiders caught passes in the first half of that game on Saturday. There's depth there. There's no doubt about it. There's depth there. It's very, very impressive to watch. The defense has come a long way. The big question has always been the offensive line, and I still don't think it's a very good offensive line. But you know what? If it's getting better and improving, then things are looking up very quickly for Texas Tech, sitting at 4-3 overall and 2-2 in conference play, and still technically in the hunt. I mean, if Texas is in the hunt for the Big 12 title at 2-2 in conference play, then you got to admit that Texas Tech should be in the hunt because they're 2-2 and they've got the head-to-head tiebreaker against Texas. And Texas is 3-2 in conference play. So let's now talk about those Texas Longhorns who lost to Oklahoma State 41-34 in what was the game of the week in the Big 12 Conference, hands down. No doubt about it. This was a classic game between Oklahoma State and Texas. And this is why, I took Oklahoma State to cover the spread. My picks went 3-1 against the spread this week, by the way. So we're the last 2 weeks we are 6-2 against the spread in our Big 12 picks. So we are rolling on those Big 12 picks. The only one I missed was I had West Virginia +6. What a dopey pick that was. But anyway, classic back and forth game. These two teams have now played the last 6 games in a row have been decided by 8 points or less. So Texas, Oklahoma State, they play great games against each other. This game came down to home field. It played a role. It's why I like the Cowboys to cover the number. And Spencer Sanders, I don't know what's going on injury-wise. I have no idea if anything's happening with that shoulder, but I know this much. 34 of 57, 391 yards, 2 touchdowns. The guy in a big spot against the Texas Longhorns was, for the most part, money in that game. And that's what you got to love about Spencer Sanders and what he brings to the table. I mean, old school, hard-nosed, tough dude, knows this team, knows the program, is confident in every situation, and it showed, and it rubs off on his guys, not just on that final drive when he hits Bryson Green for the game winner, but I mean, just throughout the game, you could see it. Even when they were trailing, it never really felt like there was a lot of concern on that sideline. Even when Texas went up 21-10, it was like, okay, calm down, let's get a response. And after Texas goes up 21-10 in the second quarter on what was a quick strike, the Cowboys responded. They responded with an 8-play drive for 75 yards. So, they were able to get right back in the game. Texas then had a 31-17 lead at one point. But even at that point, Texas goes up 31-17, which followed a Spencer Sanders interception. Remember that. And what do? Quick strike. 3 plays, 85 yards, and a touchdown. And boom, they're back in the mix. I mean, they are just right back in it. And then, you get that thing to a touchdown at halftime. And then in the second half, you do what you got to do. And kudos to this defense. This defense that held Texas to just 3 points in the second half. Oklahoma State outscored them 17-3 in that second half. So, I mean, it was just everything that you wanted to see from Oklahoma State in that environment against the Longhorns, who everyone's, again, hyping up and saying, oh, watch out, here comes Texas. They're going to win the Big 12 and the whole thing. And Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy say not so fast. Now, who knows how things would have been different, because if you were watching the game, it's 41-34 Oklahoma State after the big go-ahead touchdown to Bryson Green. And Quinn Ewers throws an interception, but then Oklahoma State has a 3-and-out punt. Texas gets the ball back, and an 8-play drive ended with a Kendall Daniels interception. But a couple plays before that, Quinn Ewers had Xavier Worthy wide open in the end zone, and it looked like Worthy kind of tripped over himself a little bit and was not able to haul it in. That would have made it a tie game, extra point pending, and who knows how that game is different. But Quinn Ewers looked very average in this game, 19 of 49. Let me repeat that, 19 of 49. And the other reason I like the Cowboys in this game last week, if you heard my preview show, which I hope, however you're getting this show now, you listen to our Heartland College Sports Picks Against the Spread preview show that we drop on podcast and YouTube Thursday nights. But I said this is the hardest road game and road environment Quinn Ewers will have played in his entire life. Dude hadn't started a road game since high school 2 years ago, because he redshirted last year at Ohio State. And then, this year his games, since he was injured, most of his games were in Austin. This was by far the most difficult road environment of Quinn Ewers' career. And it showed at times. And you got to give Oklahoma State's defense that, was able to, they didn't get to him a lot. I was shocked that the numbers were as big as they were. They only sacked Quinn Ewers once, but they had 13 quarterback hurries. 13 quarterback hurries. Colin Oliver, looked like he was all over Quinn Ewers on a couple of occasions, but they ended up just being quarterback hurries. But either way, they made life difficult. They made life uncomfortable for Quinn Ewers. And it worked really effectively, and it worked really well. And you got to give this Oklahoma State defense credit that's coming along. Heck, they lost Brandon Evers before the game, or earlier in the week. He announced that he was going to stop playing this year and prepare for the NFL draft. So I think that's lame, but whatever. It is what it is. And, I mean, I'm sitting here watching this thing and saying to myself, this defensive line looks as good as ever. I mean, it was so impressive to watch them. And Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy, you got to say this. Mike Gundy's continuing to be, I know him and Casey Dunn, you can make a strong case, lost that game against TCU last week with their conservative play calling. But all in all, Mike Gundy and this team is, I think Mike Gundy's the most underrated college football coach in America. And I don't think it's close. You talk about a guy that's always got his team, it feels like, in the top 10, top 15. They are always competing for a Big 12 championship as we hit down the home stretch of the season. Like, it's just clear as day that this guy, from an underappreciation standpoint, is at the top of the list in college football. Doesn't get the national attention, doesn't get hyped up like some of these other guys. And you know what? He's just there every year, right in the thick of a Big 12 hunt, beating Texas, competing for Big 12 championships, ranked in the top 10, ranked in the top 15. And he doesn't even have the top brand in his own state, technically. Like, what does that tell you about Mike Gundy? So that was a great game on Saturday against Texas. Kudos to Gundy. Kudos to the Cowboys. They had the more veteran quarterback. They were at home and, the better head coach. So that's a good combo to have to come out with a victory, and that's exactly what Oklahoma State did. I'm Pete Mundo. HeartlandCollegeSports.com is, of course, how you find us covering the Big 12 Conference top to bottom. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and elsewhere. If you don't, podcast, of course, is a great way to find us. Let's continue with the games and now talk about TCU and Kansas State. Well, TCU, yes, ends up, of course, winning the game 38-28 on Saturday night. And injuries, a big storyline, of course. Now, give TCU credit. They're down 28-10, and they end up coming back to win. But do I think they win if Will Howard doesn't go down? I don't think so. I don't. I mean, once Jake Rubley came in, you knew the Wildcats were in trouble in this game. There's no doubt about it. That was problematic. That's when you knew things were going to start going sideways potentially. But I'll say this about TCU. Just like what we've talked about here throughout the afternoon, they don't give up. They do not give up. They were down 17 points against Oklahoma State last week at home. They came back, they won. They were down 18 points on Saturday night against K-State. They came back and they won. And, it's one of those things where even literally they go down 28-10 and they have a turnover on downs. Then they force K-State into a quick 3-and-out. They score a touchdown, and that touchdown before halftime was, to me, the game. Getting it to 28-17 with a 10-play, 91-yard drive before halftime was a huge, huge reason that I think TCU carried that momentum into the second half. They score a touchdown right out of the gates to start the third quarter, 13 plays, 77 yards, and then K-State misses a field goal, and all the momentum at that point, it was a 44-yard miss at that point. All the momentum, if it wasn't already with TCU, is with TCU, and they score again. That touchdown before the half led to 3 straight touchdown drives. That was the difference in this game, and a big reason that TCU was able to come back and win it 38-28. And now TCU, they don't want to make a habit of going down 17, 18 points in games and trying to come back and win. But, they're 7-0. They're in the top 10. They're in the driver's seat in the Big 12 Conference. And for K-State, they dropped their first Big 12 game of the year. 3-1 in conference play, 5-2 overall. And it was a very good Big 12 battle. I don't think anything dirty is happening here with TCU. I mean, people keep bringing up that the last 4 weeks, TCU's ended up playing a backup quarterback in some way, shape, or form. Starting quarterbacks have left their games against TCU. I don't think you can take anything away from TCU. I don't see anything dirty, malicious happening from the TCU defense on purpose to cause this consistently. A little bit of luck, and luck's never something that you should apologize for in sports, college football or any other sport for that matter. But you know what? They got the victory. They're 7-0. Do I think they go undefeated in the Big 12? No. They're going to slip up. But for right now, this team is the class of this conference. There's no doubt about it. They're the class of this conference. And for K-State, you hate to see the injuries pile up the way they have. Even Deuce Vaughn had to leave the game for a little bit. But all in all, K-State, in terms of getting to a Big 12 championship game, it's still all in front of them, right? I mean, you think about it, and it's still all in front of them. They got Oklahoma State coming to Manhattan this weekend. That's a huge game. Now, if they lose that, you got some concerns. But they control their own destiny, which I hate using the cliche, but they do. And they can control their own destiny here going forward. They just got to get back on track next weekend. So there's really, you look at it, there's really 3 tiers as I see it, or two tiers in the Big 12 right now that can compete for a Big 12 championship. There's 2 tiers that can compete for a Big 12 championship. The top tier, if you look at it, is TCU, K-State, Oklahoma State. And then that second tier is Texas, Baylor, Texas Tech. Those are the tiers right now. If you were to look at this league and say, how is it breaking down? And everybody else, as far as I'm concerned, on the outside looking in. The other 4, of course, being Kansas, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Iowa State. They're on the outside looking in, no doubt about it. Let's look at some of your comments on Facebook Live. Happy Sunday, Pete. Happy Sunday to you. Can you agree Clemson's not the number 5 school in the country? I agree. TCU is better than Clemson. Baron Morton's the man. Let's see. Texas Tech's defense stopped the game from being a shootout. I mean, yeah, Texas Tech's defense was good, but on top of that, you had a situation where the offense for West Virginia certainly didn't do itself any favors at all. I mean, it was terrible to watch that side of the ball try to put things together for the Mountaineers. So that was ugly. Now, we do have kickoff times, got confirmed for next week. We were waiting on a couple of games. Kickoff times, TCU, West Virginia is going to be at noon Eastern, 11 Central. Oklahoma State, K-State will be a 2:30 Central time game. So now you can mark your calendars on those. Appreciate you guys being here. I'm Pete Mundo. HeartlandCollegeSports.com is, of course, how you find us. Heartland College Sports Weekly is our show. That's on YouTube. It's, of course, on Facebook Live right now. And subscribe to us in both those places. And, as always, the podcast. Rate, review, subscribe. We got those free koozies. I'm going to flash them on Facebook and YouTube. You can see them for yourself. I send them out. Heartland College Sports Koozies, the only way to get them. Rate, review, subscribe to the show on iTunes, and send me a screenshot to Pete Mundo, Mundo, at heartlandcollegesports.com. So appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.